Beyond Good and Evil, Prelude to a Philosophy of the Future by Friedrich Nietzsche. Part 1. The will to truth which will still tempt us to many a venture, that famous truthfulness which all philosophers so far have spoken with respect. What questions has this will to truth not laid before us? What strange, wicked, questionable questions? That is a long story even now, and yet it seems as if it had scarcely begun. Is it any wonder that we should finally become suspicious, lose patience, and turn away impatiently? That we should finally learn from this Sphinx to ask questions too. Who is it really that puts questions to us here? What in us really wants truth? Indeed, we came to a long halt at the question about the cause of this will, until we finally came to a complete stop before a still more basic question. We asked about the value of this will. Suppose we want truth. Why not rather untruth, and uncertainty, even ignorance? The problem of the value of truth came before us. Or was it we who came before the problem? Who the Sphinx? It is a rendezvous, it seems, of questions, question marks. And though it scarcely seems credible, it finally almost seems to us as if the problem had never even been put so far, as if we were the first to see it, fix it with our eyes, and risk it. For it does involve a risk, and perhaps there is none that is greater. How could anything originate out of its opposite? For example, truth out of error, or the will to truth out of the will to deception, or selfless deeds out of selfishness, or the pure and sunlight gaze of the sage out of lust. Such origins are impossible. Whoever dreams of them is a fool, indeed worse. The things of the highest value must have another peculiar origin. They cannot be derived from this transitory, seductive, deceptive, paltry world, from the turmoil of delusion and lust, rather from the lap of being, the intransitory, the hidden God, the thing in itself. There must be the basis and nowhere else. This way of judging constitutes a typical prejudgment and prejudice, which give away the metaphysicians of all ages. This kind of valuation looms in the background of all their logical procedures. It is account of this faith that they trouble themselves about knowledge, about something that is finally baptized solemnly as the truth. The fundamental truth of the metaphysicians is the faith in opposite values. It has not even occurred to the most cautious among them that one might have a doubt right here at the threshold, where it was surely most necessary, even if they vowed to themselves the omnibus dibitantum. For one may doubt first whether there are any opposites at all, and secondly, whether those popular valuations and opposite values on which the metaphysicians put their seal are not perhaps merely foreground estimates, only provisional perspectives, perhaps even from some nook, perhaps from below, frog perspectives, as it were, to borrow an expression painters use. For all the value that the true, the truthful, the selfless may observe, it would still be possible that a higher, more fundamental value for life might have to be ascribed to deception, selfishness, and lust. It might even be possible that what constitutes the value of these good and revered things is precisely that they are insidiously related, tied to, and involved with these wicked, seemingly opposite things. Maybe even one with them in essence. Maybe. But who has the will to concern himself with such dangerous maybes? For that, one really has to wait for the advent of a new species of philosophers, such as have somehow another and converse taste and propensity from those we have known so far, philosophers of the dangerous maybe in every sense. And in all seriousness, I see such new philosophers coming up. After having looked long enough between the philosophers' lines and fingers, I say to myself, by far the greater part of conscious thinking must still be included among instinctive activities, and that goes even for philosophical thinking. We have to relearn here, as one has had to relearn about heredity and what is innate, as the act of birth deserves no consideration in the whole process and procedure of heredity, so being conscious is not in any decisive sense the opposite of what is instinctive. Most of the conscious thinking of a philosopher is secretly guided and forced into certain channels by their instincts. Behind all logic and its seeming sovereignty of movement, too, there stand valuations, or, more clearly, physiological demands, for the preservation of a certain type of life. For example, that the definite should be worth more than the indefinite, and mere appearances worth less than truth. Such estimates might be, in spite of their regulative importance for us, nevertheless mere foreground estimates, a certain kind of niaiserie, which may be necessary for the preservation of just such beings as we are, supposing, that is, that not just man is the measure of things. The falseness of a judgment is for us not necessarily an objection to a judgment. In this respect, our new language may sound strangest. The question is, to what extent is it life-promoting, life-preserving, species-preserving, perhaps even species-cultivating? And we are fundamentally inclined to claim that the falsest judgments, which include the synthetic judgments a priori, are the most indispensable for us. That without accepting the fictions of logic, without measuring reality against the purely invented world of the unconditional and self-identical, without a constant falsification of the world by means of numbers, we could not live. That renouncing false judgments would mean renouncing life and a denial of life. To recognize untruth as a condition of life, that certainly means resisting accustomed value feelings in a dangerous way, and a philosophy that risks this would by that token alone place itself beyond good and evil.